Bem-vindos, alunos de Introdução aos Estudos da Linguagem. A aula de hoje é sobre funções da linguagem, mas antes de começar a aula, eu achei esse meme aqui, eu achei bem interessante comentar porque ele tem a ver com preconceito linguístico. Então, uma pessoa diz o seguinte: Why do black people use you in the wrong context? Such as you ugly instead of you're ugly. I know you guys can differentiate. It's a nuisance. Aí essa pessoa responde usando Standard English. Olha só. It's called copular deletion. Copular verbs são verbos de ligação. Então o verbo to be, né, é um verbo de ligação. It's called copular deletion or zero copula. Many languages and dialects, including ancient Greek and Russian, delete the copula, the verb to be, when the context is obvious. So an utterance like "you a bitch" in African American vernacular English is not an example of a misused you, but an example of a sentence that deletes the copular verb are, which is a perfectly valid thing to do in the dialect, just as deleting an R after a vowel is a perfectly valid thing to do in upper class British dialect. Quer dizer, o preconceito linguístico, ele é ligado a questões sociais. Então, se você pensar, por exemplo, que não pode usar, segundo a gramática tradicional, não se deve usar pronome pessoal oblíquo no início da frase, por exemplo, me empresta a caneta. Mas ninguém vai ter um preconceito linguístico contra o me empresta a caneta, mas vai ter preconceito contra o nós vai. Ambos estão gramaticalmente errados. Mas um é uma questão social e a outra não, porque a me empresta caneta todo mundo fala assim, mesmo upper class. What's more, it's been shown that copular deletion occurs in NAVE exactly in those contexts where copular contraction occurs in so-called Standard American English. That is, the basic sentence, you were great, can become you're great in Standard American English and you great in AAVE. But I know who you are cannot become I know who you're in Standard English. And according to reports, neither can you get I know who you in NAV. Quer dizer, isso significa que as variantes linguísticas, tanto standard como non-standard, elas têm regras para serem seguidas. Então não é um oba-oba sem regras. Quer dizer, essa é uma regra. Você faz o copular deletion não numa situação como essa, I know who you are. In other words, AAVE is a set of grammatical rules just as complex as systematic as a Standard American English. And the widespread belief that it is nothing more than yet another manifestation of deeply internalized racism. Adorei essa. Bom, vamos então para a nossa aula de Functions of Language. Functions of language was first defined by Roman Jakobson in 1960, and he describes language as having these functions. He found these functions: referential, which has also other names by other linguists. They call it notative, cognitive, representative, informative. Referential function, it's the function related to observation of facts. It's informative. It should not have any values added to it. But we're going to discuss this later. Emotive function or expressive, conative or appellative, or obviously emotion or expressive is a function that expresses emotions. And like this one, referential is related to the context, also called referent. Emotive, it's more related to the addressor or sender and enunciator, because the addressor is the one who adds emotion to the speech, to the utterance. Conative or appellative and imperative or directive is related to the addressee or receiver of the message, because it causes the addressee to act. So the conative, also called appellative, is connected to, for example, imperative verbs. When you say do something, you're causing an action. You're going to discuss this more deeply. Phatic, which is also relational or contact, related to the contact or channel. The phatic function is the one that you connect with you have contact, or you can connect with your interlocutor when you say, for example, can you hear me? Hello? So you are making sure that your interlocutor is listening to you, is present, can understand you. This is very common when you are giving classes through live classes, like through Zoom platform, for example, and we keep asking, can you hear me? Are you following? Do you have questions? Yeah, that's a phatic function of language. Metalingual, also called a metasemiotic, to include symbols, is the explanation. You use language to explain language. That's why metalingual. So, for example, when you say, what do you mean by that? And then your interlocutor has to rephrase what he meant. So he's explaining language using language. And poetic or aesthetic and rhetorical function of language. Well, this is a traditional way we learn functions of language. However, it was explained, it started to be explained in a more structuralistic way, because in the 60s that the theory behind it was a structuralist. But nowadays there are deeper discussions on these functions, and I found a very interesting article that you're going to read later. I'm gonna make it available for you. You're gonna read this article, but I'm going to explain it. So today's class is about functions of language, but not in a traditional way that we learn in regular school. It's a deeper discussion because it considers post-structuralistic aspects of language. So let's go to the text. This is Functions of Language, section 3.2 from the book Primer on Communication Studies. So I have only this chapter to discuss today. These are the objectives of the chapter. Identify and discuss the four main types of linguistic expressions. So the author here is focusing more on the expressive function of language, although we're going to see conative and referential too. But this is the focus. Discuss the power of language to express our identities, affect our credibility, control others, and perform actions. Discuss some of the sources of fun within language, and explain how neologisms and slang contribute to the dynamic nature of language, and identify the ways in which language can separate people or bring them together. So language causes an action. I highlighted the parts that I'd like to explain. I'm not going to read the whole article here, but I'm going to read the highlighted parts and try to explain. Some of our words convey meaning, some convey emotion. This is related to referential function. Some convey emotions, and some actually produce actions. This is related to the conative function of language. So let's start with meaning. Language is expressive, but he's going to explain meaning, emotions, and actions. Let's start with meaning. Verbal expressions help us communicate our observations, thoughts, feelings, and needs. And then he's going to focus on observations, thoughts, feelings, and needs. Observations should be something neutral. You observe a fact and you describe it. It's related to the referential or denotative, cognitive, representative, informative function of language. It's also related to the textual genre called informative. So you are informing something without adding any values. That's this function of language. So when you're writing, for example, the news, when journalists are writing the news, they're supposed to express observations only. I'm not talking about opinion piece. I'm talking about the news. Não artigo de opinião, mas a notícia em si. It should be expressing observations only. The only these functions only communicate factual knowledge as they experienced it. So they, I mean the people, they only communicate factual knowledge. And here I highlighted in another color because I'd like to discuss this a little deeper. Expressing observations in a descriptive rather than evaluative way can lessen defensiveness, which facilitates competent communication. Vamos falar aqui um pouco de jornal, notícia. Acho que eu já comentei nessa classe, mas eu não me lembro se foi com vocês que eu comentei. Você lê uma notícia e percebe como neutra. Lê a mesma notícia em outro jornal e fala, não, esse está enviesado. Eu tenho argumentado que, do ponto de vista pós-estruturalista, a língua não é neutra. Todos os textos têm um viés ideológico. Quando você não percebe, é porque esse viés ideológico bate com o seu. Quando você percebe, é porque não bate. Então, mesmo essa função de linguagem, de somente expressar uma observação, sem incluir a sua opinião, ela é questionável. Porque a língua por si só não é neutra. Então, na hora de você escolher uma palavra, né, de fazer o seu texto, oral ou escrito, essas escolhas são inconscientemente ideológicas. Um exemplo clássico é invadir e ocupar. Né? Já comentei isso também, que teve o caso das escolas, da reforma da educação, que os alunos invadiram as escolas ou ocuparam as escolas. Depende de que lado você está, para usar um desses dois verbos. Não tem como, não tem um verbo neutro para ser usado aí. Os alunos estavam na escola, é outra coisa. Não tem um verbo, não existe. Então, a língua não é neutra e as suas escolhas lexicais demonstram as suas ideologias, demonstram a sua opinião, mesmo que você não queira. O que eu estou querendo dizer é que o jornalista... Pode haver um jornalista que quer realmente manipular conscientemente, mas considere o jornalista mais honesto do mundo, que realmente não queira manipular ninguém, ele está simplesmente expressando observações de um fato. Ainda assim, o texto que ele produzir vai ser enviesado, porque a língua não é neutra. Então, esse Expressing Observations é bastante questionável. Né? Às vezes nós temos que produzir um texto que tem função informativa, somente informativa, então nós temos que tomar certos cuidados, por exemplo, com o uso de adjetivos, né, para não expressar a nossa opinião. Mas se um analista do discurso pegar o seu texto, ele vai conseguir perceber as suas opiniões ali. Por isso que eu gostaria de falar um pouco mais a fundo do que essas funções da linguagem que a gente, na verdade, aprende na escola, né? Que não é tão straightforward, não é tão simples. Aqui eu adicionei um comentário, na verdade é um reminder para mim mesma, valorações de Bakhtin. Bakhtin fala que o falante, ele adiciona valores às palavras, também num processo inconsciente, porque as palavras já chegam até nós carregadas de valores. Então... a gente é criança e os nossos pais, a gente fala um palavrão, nossos pais falam, você não pode falar isso. Então, isso já vem carregado de um certo valor, que chega um ponto que nós realmente temos aquela reação ruim quando ouvimos aquele palavrão, porque a vida inteira, né, ou desde criança, não pode falar assim. Então, nós adicionamos valores de do que é certo, que é errado, o que é bom ou que é ruim. Tudo tem valor, não existe o valor neutro. Então, Bakhtin fala que ele discorre sobre as valorações, não valorizações, valorações, adicionar valor mesmo às palavras. Continuando. So, expressing observations is debatable. Although we have to follow this function when we are producing a text that is merely informative. We just have to keep in mind that although we try our best, we're not going to be neutral. Thoughts. Whereas our observations are based on sensory information, what we saw, read, and heard, thoughts are connected to our beliefs. Okay, what we think it's true or false. It's connected to our attitudes, what we like and dislike, and our values. What we think is right or wrong, good or bad. But again, Bakhtin says that values, all language, all words have values. And again, observations, what we saw, what we read, what we heard. Still, we are interpreting what we see, what we read, and what we hear through the eyes of our own experiences. So everything we see, although we are just reporting observations, we're still interpreting, because interpretation happens all the time. Well, there's a difference in language functions when you say expressing thoughts and expressing observations. Again, language is not neutral, but there is a difference when you clearly want to express your thoughts. So, for example, you're reading the news. Again, let's talk about the news. Notícia é diferente de artigo de opinião, e existem elementos linguísticos que demonstram essa diferença. Então, por mais que a língua não seja neutra, ainda assim você tem a notícia de um fato, enviesado, mas é a notícia de um fato, e você tem um artigo de opinião. É muito importante que a gente veja claramente essa diferença do artigo de opinião de um jornal. Então, o artigo de opinião, por exemplo, expressing thoughts, e a notícia expressing observations. How about feelings? When we express feelings, we communicate our emotions. Norms for emotion expression also vary based on nationality and other cultural identities and characteristics, such as age and gender. Yes, we are freer to express our emotions depending on who you are. For example, some cultures you don't express emotions very often, and here the example of the author is in terms of age and also gender. So, for example, children are typically freer to express positive and negative emotions in public. And also about gender, there is this saying that boys don't cry, for example. So, expressing feelings, it's related to culture, actually. But anyway, he goes on to say, oh, the emojis. Expressing feelings is often the most difficult form of verbal expression, and this is why I use these emojis all the time. It's much easier, right? And he says that this is interesting for us as language learners. In order to verbally express our emotions, it's important that we develop an emotional vocabulary. As we expand our emotional vocabulary, we are able to convey the intensity of the emotion we are feeling, whether it's mild, moderate, or intense. For example, happy is mild, delighted is moderate, and ecstatic is intense. Ignored is mild, rejected, moderate, abandoned is intense. So improving your vocabulary has many advantages. Expressing needs. Expressing needs can help us get a project done at work. Not expressing needs can lead to feelings of abandonment, frustration, or resentment. For example, if one romantic partner expresses the following thought, I think we are moving too quickly in our relationship. So, so he expresses the thought, but not the feeling, not the needs. So, but doesn't also express the need. The other person in the relationship doesn't have a guide for what to do in response to the expressed thought. So, stating, I need to spend some time with my hometown friends this weekend. Would you mind if I went home by myself? That would likely make the expression more effective. Yes, so he's saying that if you express your needs, you have a better communication. However, this is my note here. There's implicit language too. So language is not that straightforward. When you say, for example, I quit smoking, it's implicit that you used to smoke. You don't say, I used to smoke, now I quit smoking. You just say, I quit smoking. There's a study from the 90s 1990s by Deborah Tannen, a linguist. She used to study the differences between how men and women express themselves. So one example that I remember, but I don't remember the title of the article, but I remember that she said that women can understand implicit language better than men, according to her studies. So if a woman says, "It's cold in here, isn't it?" a man says, "Yes, it's a fact." Another woman closes the window. Necessity of having the window closed, communicated through indirect or implicit language. Men don't understand indirect or implicit language as well as women, according to Deborah Tannen. So that's why the author says that for better communication, you should express your needs. And this is a table that summarizes what the author says about observation, thought, feeling, and need, and then some examples here, but this is only a summary. The second section is language is powerful. So let's see what it means. We'll discuss how language expresses our identities, affects our credibility, serves as means of control, and performs actions. About our identities. Language is closely related to our identity. Telling people what state you're from may give them a sense of who you are. I added here some observations of mine. Choosing between bolacha and biscoito is a matter of identity. I know how to say biscoito, but I don't use it because it's not my identity. Choosing to keep your accent when you move to another state. This is another example based on my personal experience because I lived in Minas, but I never said porta because this is so artificial to me. It's not part of my identity. I lived there for 5 years and I kept saying porta, even though some people made fun of me, and this is prejudice. But still, people may think, oh, if people I make fun of you, why don't you just say porta? You can say that. You are capable of changing your accent. I don't want to. That's my identity, right? In case of our foreign accent, it's impossible to change. I mean, our foreign accent is there. Somehow it's there because there's no zero accent. And we've discussed that, right? I believe you know the meaning of the new meaning of native speaker is now deconstructed, because what is a native speaker? A person who was born in a country that speaks that language, and that's all. It doesn't mean that he's the owner of the language. And then there's the idea that, not idea, it's a fact, that our interaction with non-native speakers is much, the possibilities of interacting with non-native speakers are much higher. In 1996, when Castro published his paper, he said that the ratio was 4 to 1, or no, 1 to 4, 1 native speaker to 4 non-native speakers. Nowadays, I think this number is much higher. So if you're going to talk to have conversations with people around the world, with French people, I don't know, people from Egypt or any country that whose people don't speak your language, you need a bridge to fill the gap. You need a bridge language, right? And today this is English. So the possibility of talking to people who have different accents is much higher. So the idea is just, keep your accent, it's your identity. And even if you want to change your accent, you can't. That's your identity. And you're going to be talking to other people who have other accents. It's just that we have this wrong idea that native speakers have no accent. But they do have accent. Which accent are you talking about? I mean, if you say Southern United States, that's an accent. Jamaica, it's another accent, and still native speakers, right? So the idea of native speakers is deconstructed, and that means your accent is not something you should try to erase. First, it's not possible. Second, everybody has an accent. You're going to be talking to other people who also have an accent. Of course, right pronunciation is you have sometimes a native speaker, whatever it means, but you have a native speaker as a model just because you want to pronounce it correctly, right? You don't want to be misunderstood. But correct pronunciation, wrong pronunciation is wrong, okay, but correct pronunciation is not a matter of accent. Well, anyway, language is identity, closely related to your identity. And there's no zero accent. If you say porta in Rio, you have an accent. If a carioca says porta in São Paulo, he has an accent. Language affects our credibility. You don't have to be a perfect grammarian to be perceived as credible. In fact, if you follow the grammar rules for written communication to the letter, you would actually sound pretty strange, since our typical way of speaking isn't as formal as structured as writing. É como eu falar, empreste-me a caneta. But you still have to support your ideas and explain the conclusions you make to be seen as competent. So writing or expressing your ideas clearly has nothing to do with grammar. It's more like how you are able to organize your ideas, to support your ideas. It's not about grammar, but of course, if you use a bad grammar in a situation where you should be using a more formal language, that affects your credibility. Aliás, isso está relacionado àquele mito do Marcos Banho, do preconceito linguístico da outra aula, que ele fala que um dos mitos é que língua não é garantia de ascensão social. Ok, é um mito. Porém, eu questiono um pouco esse mito porque se o preconceito linguístico existe, não adianta você falar, eu posso falar do jeito que eu quero, então, se você está numa situação, que aqui ele até ele cita job interview, em que o seu modo de falar vai afetar a sua credibilidade. Então, usar a linguagem adequada no momento adequado é que é a saída. Politicians and many others in leadership positions need to be able to use language to put people at ease, relate to others, and still appear confident and competent. Quer dizer, a linguagem ela também tem o poder de influenciar os outros. E aqui eu coloquei um comentário sobre formação discursiva, um conceito da análise do discurso. A formação discursiva diz respeito ao que pode e deve ser falado a partir de um lugar social. Lugar social, por exemplo, presidente é um lugar social, mãe é um lugar social, professor é um lugar social. Cada um desses lugares sociais tem um certo discurso, um certo padrão discursivo. E que se você foge desse certo padrão discursivo, vai causar estranheza, né, por parte dos interlocutores. Então, é isso que afeta a credibilidade. Você não está de acordo com a formação discursiva do lugar do qual você fala. Então, você está falando do lugar de um líder e fala alguma abobrinha, isso vai afetar a sua credibilidade. Então, está relacionado à formação discursiva, que é socialmente construído também. Eu falo, eu vou falar do jeito que eu quero, e aí entra a questão do julgamento. Language is a means of control. Directives and utterances that try to get another person to do something. They can range from a rather polite ask or request to a more forceful command or insist. So when you get people to do something, you are kind of controlling. But there is a broader issue involved in language as a control. When I was reading this article, it came to my mind the control that writers of textbooks have over students. So take ESL, EFL, for example. The books that are produced in dominating countries like United States and England, they try to spread a type of ideology that makes them, that puts them in a higher position. So we interpret these cultures as something like superior to ours. because the part of the culture that is depicted in these books, they kind of control the way we think about them. So this is, this language as means of control is a subsection of language, the relation between language and power. And yes, you can control other nations by spreading your language. Pensem, por exemplo, se vocês fossem autores de um livro didático de português, se vocês não colocariam, conscientemente ou não, talvez maior parte do tempo inconsciente, porque é o conhecimento que nós temos, o recorte da cultura que nós faríamos do Brasil seria um recorte mais positivo do que negativo. E colocaríamos o português brasileiro acima das outras variedades do português, que existem vários países que falam português, né? Então, esse é um exemplo de language and power. Verbal communication characterized by empathy, understanding, respect, and honesty creates open climates that lead to more collaboration and more information exchange. Verbal communication that is controlling, deceitful, and vague creates a closed climate in which people are less willing to communicate and less trusting. Então, se esse controle ele está muito evidente, como por exemplo command or insist, isso pode afetar as relações. Mas aqui está uma explicação um pouco mais superficial sobre a questão do controle. Tem questões muito mais amplas, muito mais complexas, como por exemplo um controle até inconsciente que acontece através da disseminação de uma cultura dominante, por exemplo, através de material didático. Language is performative. This is interesting. I copied here. É um trecho. Eu não vou ler tudo, mas vocês leem depois. É um trecho tirado de um capítulo de livro do Alastair Pennycook, Uma Linguística Aplicada Transgressiva, no livro do Moita Lopes, por uma linguística aplicada indisciplinar. Nesse trecho, ele discute o que é o significado da língua ser performativa. Tem esse finalzinho aqui. Conforme Butler sugere, ser chamada de garota desde o começo da existência é o modo no qual a garota se torna transitivamente uma garota com o passar do tempo. Bom, o que é a language is performative? Nós estamos performando o tempo todo. Então, quando é ser chamada de garota, por exemplo, o meu comportamento verbal, ele se adapta ao que eu entendo como o que é ser uma mulher. Então, nós somos discursivamente formados para sermos homens ou mulheres. Eu não estou falando da questão biológica, não. Estou falando do comportamento verbal aqui. O foco é o comportamento verbal. Mas o comportamento de modo geral, a gente aprende, né, como se comportar. A gente aprende a ser homem, aprende a ser mulher, de acordo com o que existe no discurso. Os discursos que circulam e que nos formam. Então, quando fala boys don't cry, por exemplo, é um modo até dos homens esconderem, se eles estão emotivos de alguma forma, eles escondem mais do que as mulheres. Não que ficam menos emotivos, escondem mais. Isso, eles estão sendo performativos, é uma performance. Então, a língua, ela é o tempo todo uma performance. Aqui está separado, Language is Performative como um subtítulo separado, né, uma subseção separada, mas, na verdade, é tudo meio intrincado, a língua é performativa o tempo todo. E está muito relacionado ao conceito de formação discursiva que eu falei um pouco antes. Porque é uma performance também quando você está falando de um determinado lugar. Então, eu sei que eu falando do lugar de professora, eu tenho um certo protocolo para seguir. Então, é uma performance. Por isso que language is performative. Aqui ele dá outros exemplos que são mais straightforward, eles são mais simples de entender. Aqui é mais filosófico até. Mas aqui tem outros exemplos. Por exemplo, performative here, he says that language is performative because it causes an action. Tá, causes an action. É igual como se diz, garotos não choram, isso homens não choram. Isso não vai causar uma ação, a ação, né, da pessoa se comportar dessa maneira, porque é assim que o homem se comporta. está muito ligado ao cognitive function of language. Alguns exemplos. I promise, I guarantee, or I pledge does more than convey meaning. It communicates intent. If you promise, people are gonna, ask you later, hey, you promised, you should do that, right? Here's another example. Two simple words, I do. It means that two people are now bound in a relationship recognized by the government and or a religious community, que aqui ele está se referindo ao I do no casamento, né? Aceito. These two words, if said in the right context, the wedding, in front of the right person, such as a judge or a reverend, bring with them obligations that cannot be undone without additional steps and potential negative repercussions. O que ele quer dizer? Não dá para desfazer, né, sem additional steps, que seria o divórcio, por exemplo, e até repercussões negativas, dependendo da comunidade. Mas, então, I do, quer dizer, quando você diz isso num contexto, num determinado contexto que é o casamento, você está causando uma ação, né, que não pode nem ser desfeita depois tão facilmente. Outros exemplos. Judges' words perform actions ranging from holding someone in contempt of court to sentencing someone to death. Então, quando a pessoa fala culpado, né, o juiz, eu não, mas o juiz fala culpado, causa uma ação que pode ser, inclusive, devastadora. Aqui eu coloquei um trecho do... Actually, it's much more performative than we believe. Já comentei isso. Tem um livro na área de análise do discurso, que é do Michel Pechet, que se chama O Discurso, Estrutura ou Acontecimento. Ele diz que discurso é uma estrutura, mas que também faz acontecer. Estrutura porque é língua, se você pensar, sujeito, verbo, objeto. É estrutura porque a sintaxe significa. E acontecimento porque historiciza. Então, quando o discurso... quer dizer, quando discurso é a língua em uso, né? Então, quando a língua está em uso, ela também faz acontecer coisas. Esse é um exemplo, né? Está fazendo acontecer. Eu considero culpado. Pronto, o cara vai para a cadeia ou até morrer. E o discurso ele é anterior à ação. Só se, por exemplo, do Pechet, né? Só se constroem aparelhos para provar que a Terra não é o centro do universo a partir do momento em que essa dúvida surge. Houve, então, primeiramente o enunciado, a Terra não é o centro do universo. Depois houve a ação de pesquisar se isso é verdade e criar aparelhos para isso. Então, língua é um acontecimento. Performative, você causa uma ação, e é um acontecimento. Historicizar é um neologismo, né, que diz, está criando história, está criando uma ação. Bom, aqui é sobre o juiz ainda. Imagine how powerful the words "we, the jury, find the defendant guilty or innocent" seem to the defendant awaiting his or her verdict. Those words impose fines, penalties, or even death. Well, third section, language is fun. This is a very simple section that describes, for example, word games, how we can have fun with language. And he mentions writers, poets, and comedians have built careers on their ability to have fun with language and in turn share that fun with others. And then he mentioned some examples here, like palindrome, aquela coisa de que uma frase ou uma palavra lida ao contrário é exatamente a mesma coisa. And he mentioned some word games. By the way, Lewis Carroll invented Scrabble, which is a word game, because he was a master in inventing language, inventing words and playing with words. What else? Language is dynamic. And in this section, we'll learn more about the dynamic nature of language by focusing on neologisms and slang. So through these two examples, the author is going to explain how language is dynamic, which means that language changes over time, and this is natural. Language is not being destroyed by changes. Some conservative thoughts say that this is a destruction of language, but actually all languages change through times because it's like a living organism. Well, the first factor that causes changes to language is neologisms, and here he explains how neologisms are formed. There are many ways. So one of the, first of all, newly used words make their way into languages in several ways, including borrowing and changing structure. This is funny. Taking is actually a more fitting descriptor than borrowing, since we take words but don't really give them back. In any case, borrowing is the primary means through which languages expand. Eu li isso daqui e me lembrei de meme, gente. Vou mostrar aqui para vocês. English doesn't borrow from other languages. English follows other languages down dark alleys, knocks them over, and goes through their pockets for loose grammar. Por que a gente fala empréstimo linguístico se não vai devolver, né? Gostei disso. Mas o empréstimo é um dos fatores que fazem a língua mudar. David Crystal says, English has been called a vacuum cleaner of languages. Not only English, but I think, I mean, all languages, maybe. Aqui eu coloquei um exemplo do português, o imexível, o famoso imexível que vocês não se lembram porque não tinham nem nascido ainda quando aconteceu. Nos anos, eu acho que 80 ou início dos anos 90, não me lembro, tinha um político, não sei se ele era o Magri, não sei se ele era deputado ou ministro, e ele falou, um jornalista perguntou sobre mudar de ministros, e ele falou que o ministério era imexível. Nossa, mas ele foi muito criticado. Ele caiu na mídia como tendo inventado uma palavra que não existia, que não sei o quê. Eu li numa época que imexível foi dicionarizado, eu não sei, eu não cheguei a conferir isso. Mas se foi mesmo, quer dizer, depois desse auê todo com o imexível do Magri, acho que acabou entrando no dicionário. Mas enfim, eu li um texto na graduação, era um texto até escrito pelo meu professor de linguística, um artigo falando que ele não fez nada além de usar os elementos da língua portuguesa para criar uma palavra que é completamente compreensível para o falante do português. Quer dizer, você tem o radical, que vem do verbo mexer, você tem um sufixo e um prefixo. Um prefixo de negação, né, o i, e um sufixo que transforma o verbo em adjetivo. Então, ele fez todo um processo de formação de palavras, né, de morfologia, que existe. Mas a palavra não tinha no dicionário. Então, a crítica é só porque a palavra não tem no dicionário. Mas eu faço isso bastante, mas eu tenho consciência de que tem certas situações que eu não posso fazer. Mas eu faço falar, inventei agora essa palavra. Então, derivar palavras, né, fazer essa derivação de palavras, porque às vezes falta alguma coisa, falta um adjetivo para aquilo que você quer falar. Bom, o neologismo ele vem muito dessa criação de palavras que que vem da própria morfologia. E aqui ele dá outros exemplos de formação de palavras que criam de empréstimos de outras línguas, de criações, assim, colocando prefixos e sufixos. E aqui sobre a influência da tecnologia na criação de palavras. Existing words also change in their use and meaning. The digital age has given rise to some interesting changes in word usage. Before Facebook, the word friend had many meanings, but it was mostly used as a noun referring to a companion. The sentence I'll friend you, sendo um verbo, né, wouldn't have made sense to many people just a few years ago because friend wasn't used as a verb. Google went from being the proper noun referring to the company to a more general verb that refers to searching for something on the internet, perhaps not even using the Google search engine. Então, quando a gente fala Google it, procura no Google. Em português, o verbo já fica um pouco mais difícil por causa das questões morfológicas, né? Tem que falar googlar, né? Em inglês não tem que mudar, mas em português, por causa das desinências verbais, a gente tem que mudar e fica um pouco mais difícil fazer essa derivação. mas existe, em alguns casos. Although languages are dying out at an alarming rate, many languages are growing in terms of new words and expanded meanings, thanks largely to advances in technology, as can be seen in the example of cloud. Ele mencionou mais acima cloud como nuvem, né, e na tecnologia como se usa nuvem. Well, these changes, they don't mean that language is being destroyed. It's just a natural process. New contexts, new situations, new concepts create new language, create new words for the language. And the other factor that contributes to this change is slang. This is interesting. Research has shown that only about 10% of slang terms that emerge over a 15-year period survive. Aqui eu coloquei reminder para mim. A história do dog bag. Eu aprendi que dog bag era aquele quando você pede para guardar as sobras do restaurante para levar para casa, né? Como se você fosse levar para o cachorro. Bom, eu pedi um dog bag no restaurante de Nova York em 2019 e o garçom, que tinha uns 18 anos mais ou menos, não me entendeu, aí eu expliquei. E eu falei, mas é estranho, né? Eu aprendi isso em inglês mesmo, eu não estava traduzindo direto da minha língua, nada disso. Aí ele falou, pode ser porque eu sou muito novo, falou alguma coisa assim. Querendo dizer que era uma linguagem velha, que eu era velha, ou algo nesse sentido. Aí depois eu estava assistindo, um tempo depois eu estava assistindo aquele seriado That 70 Show, que, né, é um seriado que passa nos anos 70. E aí um dos personagens, o Hyde, pediu um dog bag. Falei, nossa, realmente, vai ver uma coisa bem dos anos 70. And this is interesting for us to think about how we learn a language. We are eager to learn informal language, slang. That's very common among Brazilians because we want to communicate like with young people and speak the same language. The problem is that language changes, and then if you learn a slang now, some slang terms now, and we have contact with, say, American people only in the future, these slangs you learned may not be used anymore. But think about our own culture. Think about our own culture. Não sei se ainda tem muita influência, mas as novelas até uns anos atrás tinham muita influência no modo como a gente falava. Os jargões das novelas passavam para a vida real, só enquanto a novela estava no ar, depois passava. Alguns ficaram, como É Vero, de uma novela italiana e tal, mas eles têm uma relação com o que está acontecendo no momento e podem se apagar depois. According to research, 15 years is the period that slang terms survive. So if you're teaching our students, for example, some informal language, some slang terms, we should have this in mind, that not necessarily it's going to be used in the future. And our students should know that too. And we should know that as speakers, and also as translators. If you're dealing with a book that has some slang terms, we have to pay attention to, for example, when the book was written, to try to use the slang terms that are equivalent, let's say equivalent, to the ones that we would have like in Brazil. So we should be very careful about these words that don't survive for so many years. I've seen like some translations being remade just because the language used was kind of old for the type of book. So a book that is written for teenagers and has some, cool language should be updated sometimes. Well, it depends on the function of the text. It depends on if, for example, if a book was written in the 60s and the fact that the slang used in the 50s is important, then you should translate to Portuguese using some slang terms used in the 60s in Brazil too. So you don't have to update all the translations but it depends on the function of the book, okay? I'm not saying that all books that have, all texts that have slang terms should be updated. I'm not saying that. But you should pay attention to whether the slang terms make sense now or not. Well, most slang, but this is like a deeper discussion, which should be, you know, in translation practice classes. Most slang words also disappear quickly. I just said that. And their alternative meaning fades into obscurity. For example, you don't hear anyone using the word macaroni to refer to something cool or fashionable. This is because there is this song, it's a popular song, Yankee Doodle. Eu tenho CD de criança que tinha essa música e eu ouvi esse macaroni e não sabia o que era, até me deparar com alguns textos que explicavam melhor. Yankee Doodle isn't saying that the feather he sticks in his cap is a small curved pasta shell. He's saying it's cool or stylish. Quer dizer, quando ele fala que alguma coisa lá era macaroni, essa pena que vai no chapéu é macaroni, ele não está falando que era macarrão, está falando que era cool. Well, what about textese? Textese, this suffix here, it's like Portuguese, for example. It means a language. Textese it's a language. Textese, also called text messages and TXT talk, among other things, has been called a new dialect of English that mixes letters and numbers, abbreviates words, and drops vowels and punctuation to create concise words and statements. Although this dialect has primarily been relegated to the screens of smartphones and other text-capable devices, it has slowly been creeping into our spoken language. Sim, a gente fala às vezes, é minha BFF, né? E usa algumas textese, internet language in our spoken language. We can say that this is a language typical of some textual genres. Well, why? Because we should keep in mind that it's perfectly okay to write like this, no problem. It's a dialect, it's a language variation, a language variety. So, but it has some situations in which you should use. Again, this is related to credibility. Remember that language affects our credibility. So if you're writing a professional email, for example, you should not use textese. At the same time, you should not judge people who use textese, and I'm talking about the right situations, you know, like Facebook or WhatsApp. It's okay. I've seen people feeling uncomfortable about using textese in WhatsApp because they say, no, this is wrong language. No, it's not. For the textual genre, in case, you know, WhatsApp, Facebook, or, you know, social media, that's perfectly okay. It saves you some time. I mean, abbreviating language saves you time. So we have to keep in mind that, again, it's a language variety. You know, dialect also means language variety. It's a language variety, and it can be used in some situations and not in others because it affects your credibility. But it should not be, you know, like, we shouldn't be judgmental about the use of textese. That's the point. David Crystal, a well-known language expert, says that such changes to the English language aren't new, and that texting can actually have positive effects. Yes. For example, you kind of, you know, you have to think, you have to reflect and try to understand what this means, especially if it's not your native language. I could understand you are great, which I think it's great because, you know, GR plus 8. You have to understand how this is pronounced, otherwise you're going to say great, wait, what? You know, you don't understand. So it has positive effects on our brains. But this one I couldn't understand, then I read. If you translated that into, in my humble opinion, so this is an abbreviation, I didn't know that. I know some abbreviations, but not all of them. The one that I use a lot is, by the way, BTW, but that's very common. So it has a positive effect. And Crystal also points out that Shakespeare also abbreviated many words. Shakespeare, just like Lewis Carroll, was kind of, he liked like word games, played with the rules of language, and made up several thousand words. Yeah, I read somewhere that many words we use today in modern English were invented by Shakespeare. And he's not considered an abuser of language, on the contrary. Crystal points out that in order to play with language, you must first have an understanding of the rules of language. Again, going back here, I have to understand how to pronounce 8 to understand great. And the last section is language is relational. We relate to people when you use language. Here's an example. We language includes the words we, our, and us, and can be used to promote a feeling of inclusiveness. Here's an example. This example is personal experience. A dad to a mom. Oh, you forgot to bring the baby bottle. You forgot versus we forgot to bring the baby bottle. When the dad says you forgot this, you forgot that, it means that it was exclusively a duty of the mom. You know, the mom was supposed to do everything, and then if the mom forgot, so the dad can say you forgot that. But it's a mutual task, right? So the dad should be, they're both parents. The dad should have the obligation of not forgetting, let's say. So if you say we forgot the baby bottle, that's more inclusive. That's inclusive. Like we forgot, dad forgot, mom forgot. That's inclusive. If you say you forgot, like it's not my duty. It wasn't my obligation to do that. Você tá só tirando o seu da reta, né? Como se diz. E isso dá esse sentimento de ressentimento mesmo. E ele dá outros exemplos aqui. You're making me crazy. Quer dizer, ao invés de falar you are making me crazy, I'm starting to feel really anxious because we can make a decision about this. Então, you language pode ser ofensivo. Can lead people to become defensive and feel attacked, which is true. I felt attacked here in this situation. Which could be divisive and result in feelings of interpersonal separation. When frequent communication combines with supportive messages, which are messages communicated in an open, honest, and non-confrontational way, people are sure to come together. When a person is surrounded by people who do not speak his or her native language, it can be very comforting to run into another person who speaks the same language. This is very common. I mean, if you are in another country and then you hear someone speaking Portuguese, you make friends right away. So yes, language can bring people together. Serious attempts to create a common language, sometimes referred to as lingua franca. Lingua franca means a bridge language. If I don't speak your language, you do not speak my language, we need a common language to communicate. It could be an international language like English, or it could be, for example, a language that we have in common. Like I speak Portuguese as a native language, you speak, let's say, French as a native language, but we both understand Spanish. So Spanish could be lingua franca. So lingua franca is not international language. It's different. Okay, lingua franca is this language that could fill the gap between the two people who do not speak the same language. And international language is a powerful language like English nowadays. Well, this attempt began in the 1600s as a world exploration brought increased trade and world exploration brought increased trade. Okay, and Latin was no longer effective as the language of international business. So people started to try to create a language that was international, and then here he gives the example of Esperanto, that means hopeful, that was created by a Polish eye doctor at the end of the 1800s, and today has between 1 or 2 million fluent speakers worldwide. Well, this example is because we are here in the part that language can bring people together. The attempt of creating an international language which is artificial, well, has kind of failed, because actually what makes a language international is a matter of power, and economic power. So English is today the international language because of the power that the United States has in the world, right? Not much about England, although maybe in Europe, I don't know, maybe in Europe England has more power, but here in the Americas we have more contact with the United States. We kind of perceive American power more present in our lives. For example, we consume American pop culture, music and TV shows, etc. So imagine Hollywood, for example, the industry of Hollywood, how the power of the United States is spread in the world. So language, to be international, it's closely related to a matter of power, and that's why Latin was an international language once, and also French. And nowadays it's English. And why not Esperanto? Because there's no native speaker of Esperanto. It's not related to a country, and it's not related to, it doesn't have a power relation that could bring Esperanto to be an international language. So that's the reason why artificial language didn't work. But the attempts to make an artificial language to be international were related to the fact that one language could bring people together. And here he kind of explains several barriers will have to be overcome in order for an auxiliary language like Esperanto to gain international acceptance. First, there would have to be a massive effort to put into a period of simultaneous learning. Otherwise, it's difficult to motivate people to learn a language that's not necessary for their daily lives and that no one else speaks. Eu me lembrei também do caso do mandarim, quando eu era adolescente, que falavam que mandarim seria língua internacional, porque tem mais falantes de mandarim do que de inglês. Isso é uma falácia, né? Tem mais falantes nativos, porque na época a ingenuidade estava contando falantes nativos do inglês. Agora, eu não entro na estatística, vocês não entram, e nós somos falantes do inglês. E nós não entramos na estatística. Então, não, tem mais falantes de inglês no mundo que de mandarim. A questão é só porque a China é o país mais populoso do mundo e por isso tem muitos falantes de mandarim, mas todos concentrados ali na China. Inclusive, falantes de mandarim são falantes de inglês como língua estrangeira. E o contrário, a recíproca não é verdadeira, né? Os falantes de inglês não são falantes de mandarim. Então, pelo menos ainda, né, a gente não pode prever o futuro, mas ainda não houve uma relação de poder que pudesse colocar o mandarim como língua internacional. E aí nós não temos, e eu lembro quando eu era adolescente, tem que estudar inglês, mas tem que estudar mandarim também, ainda bem que não fiquei estudando. Bom, seria muito interessante ter uma outra língua ainda, né? Uma língua adicional. Mas a questão é que não existe motivação para isso, porque você olha ao seu lado e no one else speaks. Quer dizer, deveria ter um massive effort para que todo mundo estudasse, que vamos fazer dessa língua a língua internacional. É bastante artificial, né? Por isso que não funcionou o Esperanto. Por isso, agora, mandarim não é igual ao Esperanto, porque não é uma língua artificial. Eu só estou dizendo que o mandarim ele não é a língua mais falada no mundo, como muitas pessoas acreditam. E não chegou, pelo menos não ainda, a ser a língua internacional, por questões de poder e por questões que não tem um massive effort for everybody to study because no one else speaks Mandarin around you. Well, sometimes the argument supporting this proposition seems to be based the proposition of having one language, as a common language to everyone, to be based on the notion that a shared language will lead to more solidarity and in-group identification among the speakers. However, many of these movements are politically and ideologically motivated and actually seek to marginalize and/or expel immigrants, typically immigrants who are also people of color. That reminded me of a video that has gone viral, in which an American man was aggressive to a Hispanic woman who was speaking Spanish on the cell phone. It was like they were in a restaurant. I don't know if you've seen the video, but the man was like, you have to speak English. Oh no, he said American. You have to speak American. We are in America. I speak American. He was very aggressive to this person. So yeah, there is one language that would ideally bring them together if both were speaking English. But it was a matter of, if this woman was speaking English, then the man would not be aggressive. However, it was a matter of racism, because he was an immigrant and she was an immigrant, and the man was, irritated by the fact that there are immigrants in the United States. So it's a matter of racism, actually. Again, language and prejudice. And language can separate us. Okay, here, language can bring people together. If we speak the same language, we can relate to these people and have a more solidarity, and more, we could have more, as it says, in-group identification. But also could separate. This is one example. And here he brings some other examples. The other example is about the Second World War. He says, symbols, both words and images, were a very important part of Hitler's rise to power in the 30s and 40s in Europe. Various combinations of colored stars, triangles, letters, and other symbols were sewn onto the clothing and uniforms of people persecuted by the Nazis in order to classify them. People were labeled and reduced to certain characteristics rather than seen as complete humans, which facilitated the Nazis' oppression, violence, and killing. So the Jewish people were labeled with symbols and colors and words that would say, this is Jewish, so this one should be persecuted. This is an example of how language can separate. So in this case, the Nazis consider themselves different, and not only different, superior to all the other races, all the other ethnicities, and people in general. At the interpersonal level, unsupportive messages can make others respond defensively, which can lead to feelings of separation and feeling of separation or actual separation or dissolution of a relationship. And then here he brings some verbal tactics that can bring people together or separate people. Global labels like "you're a liar," sarcasm that sometimes sounds like humor, but it's actually very offensive. Dragging up the past, which is very common in relationships. People are having a fight and one of them starts to bring things from the past. Negative comparisons. Na sua idade? Nossa, eu já era isso. Jade graduated from college without any credit card debt. Judgmental you messages. You're never going to be able to hold down a job. And threats, which could actually be crime. in some situations. And here he gives some tips for you not to use this kind of language, because this kind of language is the one that could separate people. Well, anyway, key takeaways. This is a summary of the chapter, but what I wanted to bring here is that language is not only, these functions. If you think about these functions as something superficial, referential, emotive, connotative, and things separated, they are not separated, and they are not related only to the structure of the language. It's much more than that. Language causes an action. Language influences people. Language controls people. Language can it is performative, so we can historicizar. What is the verb historicizar em português? Em inglês eu não me lembro, mas é parecido. So it's not only a structure. As Peixe says, language is also a happening, né? É um acontecimento. A língua acontece, faz acontecer. Não é só uma estrutura. Ah, mas eu só falei isso, só falou isso e causou uma grande confusão, por exemplo. We have, as linguists, as students of languages, we should keep this clearly in mind. Well, and here there's an exercise which can be done either in Portuguese or English, you choose, okay? The exercise is like this. You choose one of the 5 sections above. You write a summary of the section, and then you give some personal examples to further explain the section you chose. Such examples should be some situations you've witnessed or situations you've been through. Because, for example, when I was reading the text, there was a lot of personal experiences that came to my mind. Some of them I shared with you. So this is what I want from you. I'm sure that while I was speaking and while you read the text, I'm sure that you're going to remember. The text will remind you of many situations, or some of them at least. I'm sure you can relate to some of these situations. But first of all, before you just make informal comments, actually I'd like you to, I'd like to make sure you understood the chapter. So that's why I'm asking a summary first, and then you report some interesting situations you've been through. Okay, so that's all for today.